And I'm just going to let her speak, mainly.
I think it's okay to ask oneself, where were you, and did I do a good enough job knowing what we found in Rotherham? So that's why I suppose really what I've been saying when I've had the chance to do so in the last not even 24 hours, but that I think we've just got to attempt to put sort of children in particular at the heart of any discourse.
Something the governments haven't done since 2000.
And in part for what I'm about to say, I think I'd be very surprised if any public servant at all in the land wouldn't agree with the findings of what it is I'm trying to do. So just to set the context, I'm very conscious this is the Home Affairs Committee, so it's not like I'm appearing in front of people that don't know some things. So if I'm grandmother suck eggs, forgive me. I'm sure you know a great deal about these subjects as others don't. But I think it's important to say that what
most
is
of them
called
don't care about it. That's
child
the problem.
Sexual exploitation, which is quite a mouthful in itself, is thankfully still rare. It may be at the most heinous end of crimes, but we have to get a sense of the proportionality of where it fits in that 100,000 crimes of child abuse that have been reported in the last 12 months. I'm fairly sure that it's still happening today. I think that we can explain that if necessary.
We all know that it's happening today because there's videos of it coming out every single day.
To find these children in particular, I think that the world of crime is quite complicated.
It's not.
To quote colleagues in the police, they are awash with online harm and online exploitation. We've had
they keep blaming online.
The visibility of county lines and child criminal exploitation, at the same time that I don't think child abuse or indeed child sexual exploitation has gone away. And certainly from the evidence that we saw during the audit and the visits that we undertook to some police forces, it is clear that it is still data. The national data on grooming gangs is sound not often accused of being a civil servant, but incomplete and unreliable is what is written here. I would say that's putting it mildly. And I feel very strongly
so the police are incompetent.
On issues that are as searing as people's race, when actually we know the prejudice and racism that people of colour experience in this country, to not get how you treat that data right, actually I think is a different level.
And this is what will be in the report. It's all down to racism. You wait.
Sorry to put it so bluntly. I didn't put it that bluntly yesterday. But I think it's particularly important if you are collecting those sorts of issues to get them 100% right. And if you are not getting them 100% right, please don't use them to justify another position, which is potentially what happened. So, and that may be well-meaning, it may not be well-meaning, but that's how the data has
and these
run.
figures will never be right. Why they allow people to self-identify.
And either, my view is collect something or don't collect something. For God's sakes, don't half-collect it. That's a bloody disaster, frankly. And so then, I think it's a matter now of public record. We dug deeper into 3 police force areas where there's a clear high rates of child sexual exploitation offending, and dug deeper into those to see whether they had established the facts and figures, and they had established the facts and figures much more than the national data. That then meant I was somewhat tougher, actually, in the way I've just talked about the national data, because if I know it can be collected in large police forces effectively, why can't I collect that nationally? Do you see me added to the sort of sense, oh dear God, what on earth have you done here? So I think it's clear that if you look at those 3 large police forces and their data, one is historic, to be fair, the other 2 are live, then the disproportionality issue is clear, and obviously they ask for, when they ask for ethnicity, they largely, one stops at Asian, the other stops at Pakistani heritage. And again, I can only feel the pain of those communities to know that it's all bundled together in one big grouping, and how unhelpful that is to the very communities that you are talking about. So again, I think that that's not a great way for public policy to be done. Andy Burnham quite rightly, in my view, did a bit of what I'm doing, which is he thought, this stuff is going on in Greater Manchester. I need to be assured, he called them assurance reviews, what's going on in Rochdale, what's going on in Oldham. I need to see what the police are doing, and he'd had actually victims and Maggie Oliver in a big meeting in whatever it's not the town hall, but whatever his, place is in Manchester. And they'd all agreed that, people had to be held to account. We had to find out the truth. We had to find out were decisions made. If you look at the assurance reviews that he had done, he was so frustrated, and so would I have been, so were the people that did those reviews, that it took years. Nobody shared data. They were all lawyering up to fight over who would share what data. And, that I put it in more mild terms in the report, but when it came to report 3, which I think was like 4 or 5 years later, the guys resigned and the thing was handed over to sort of a statutory body in the National Inspectorate and Ofsted. And so I thought to myself, okay guys, come on. Nobody's volunteering to find the truth here, and we owe these victims that. Secondly, you see, extremely important assurance reviews by Greater Manchester Mayor, who's one of the, long-standing mayors, knew what he was doing. He couldn't get to the bottom of it. And then you look at the 50 serious case reviews, and you look at the world of serious case reviews, and you see that, to be honest, Mr. Richards, they do not get to the truth of what happens in these cases. What they do is,
cover it up.
Has the team around the child operated effectively? Now, that's really important, don't get me wrong, but, part of the team around the child are the perpetrators, who spot that the team around the child isn't good enough or can't safeguard that child enough. Do we talk about the predators in any of these serious case reviews? Did we know about these predators? Were we properly safeguarding the children? Sorry, you can tell from my tone. I said to everybody, I'll be really measured. Don't worry, I won't get, like that about it. But when you start talking about this, you think, yeah, that's why I want a statutory inquiry. And that's why it has to be national with strong local, there's a connection between the local and national. So I know it's not what everybody wanted, but I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. I hope that if anybody has teenage girls and
the local councils and that shouldn't have anything to do with it, because they were the one covering it up.
Switch their finds a friend off, you would be beside yourselves. Absolutely beside yourselves. But because we're dealing with kids that haven't come from that, we as a state attempt to have a safety net. And that safety net doesn't see that missing, so even though it's an important thing and you have missing task force and that sort of, it doesn't grasp the bigger picture. And I think fair play to West Yorkshire Police. They have an analyst, Mr. Smith, I've forgotten his first name, and Paul Smith. And after Rotherham had happened, he, often in public service you find individuals, don't you, and you think, wow. And so he developed what they call an algorithm. I'm not sure it is an algorithm, but let's go there. And essentially what he did was say, if we put together missing more than twice and put that across, you'll be aware of this, put it across kids perhaps in children's homes, I think it is, or in child in need. Then they put it across whether they'd ever been on the radar of anywhere in the criminal justice system. Hey presto, you have a completely different cohort. And I think that we say as a system, and I include myself in this, missing is really important, but then it really turns into a transaction rather than, oh dear God, where is this child? Now, if we had rape laws that meant when said child has gone out all night with said perpetrator and his friends, that we will do them for rape, it changes the conversation of the state, really, because rape is seen as one of the most, quite rightly, terrible things that can happen, and particularly terrible things if it can happen to children. So in a way, I'm trying to use the opportunity of this audit to say, how do we reset how we think about children?
That doesn't make sense.
And it's also why, Dame Karen, I'm so concerned about the whole children's services side of this, in that I think they don't even see those children. So how can you would look at missing, You would look at who's on your child in need. You look at the moment, they just have neglect for most of these kids. I think there's some very profound questions to be asked about what's happening in and around children, of which missing, we call it a red flag. You think some sort of beaming noises, a beep.
Yeah, but sometimes kids go missing because their parents are dog shit.
There's plenty of politicians that wish that was possible, but it's sort of, and yet it's
really important to collect ethnicity and race data, and you've set out really comprehensively why that's the case. But I just think about other kind of child sexual group exploitation that we've seen. So there's been significant ones in the Catholic Church. Also in my city of Edinburgh, there's been significant challenges in boarding schools. And I just wonder, are there other data points we should be collecting? Religion, for example, would be one. But are there other markers, you think? Or I just wonder why ethnicity and race have been singled out so specifically. I mean, I understand why, but why not others?
So chapter 4 of the report looks at what we call the nature and characteristics of child-based sexual exploitation. It's not an academic exercise of interest, finding out what it looks like. It's actually for important reasons of understanding offending and being able to, by understanding it better, being able to tackle it better. So there's a whole range of things in that chapter, including ethnicity. Ethnicity stands out as one of the areas where data collection has been really poor, where it's been seen as an optional extra. But there are lots of others in there, and we've spoken about some of them. The vulnerability factors associated with victims, for example, understanding those, like missing episodes and so on, can be really important in better tackling offending. All of the demographic information is important, and we go through it all in that chapter. I would say that applies more broadly to crime in general. It's really important to understand who is being affected by crime.
All data points should be gathered. Religion,
representation of certain
sex,
sections of society, whatever that might be, age,
ethnicity,
sex,
age,
religion, culture, nationality, ethnicity. Those are important things to understand in order to work out how you better protect the
every
victims,
point of data is a better to actual facts.
And I think the other interesting thing about this, it's interesting as a sort of been around a long time, is that you don't always have to collect national data. You could actually have done a deep dive. Policy making can be done in many different ways. I think that the issue is that people don't always find looking at ethnicity straightforward in certain circumstances. In some ways, they find it really easy to look at it, look at the Metropolitan Police and Black Londoners. So there's an irony to sometimes we decide to find this data writ large, and then other times we decide not to. So, I mean, I'd add religion into that as well. You could easily run a deep dive into a set of data to establish all sorts of drivers, but nobody's bothered. Sorry, that's too harsh. Nobody has
I haven't bothered.
Seen it as a priority. And I think sometimes my main view about these things is that if the good people don't grasp difficult issues, there's plenty of bad people out there that will grasp them for you. So I'm always a believer, no matter who is in power. I've worked for several prime ministers, several different administrations over the years, and my advice to everybody always is get ahead of trouble and grasp it, because you're a good person, and there's plenty of people out there that grasp the bad stuff and make it even worse than it needs to be. I'll come to Bradford in a second. The first one you mentioned was the where we talk about Rochdale. So just, sorry, I may not have made myself clear earlier. So I think Andy Burnham did a good thing in Greater Manchester to say, I'm not happy with what's going on here. He listened to victims, he did talk to the police, he did talk to others, and he tried to put in place, he did, not try, sorry, that's unfair, he instituted assurance reviews, if that's what they called them, to try and establish exactly
and they're still failing.
You're wishing, I think, for Bradford. And two good people did them. I met one of them who I know was in Commissioner in Rotherham when we were there, and they only got so far because essentially they couldn't require people to give them information. They couldn't require people to give them appear before them. They couldn't didn't have any ability to do hearings. And
they had no power.
Put in the report, it just went on and on and on, and then they did this work, but nobody
She's trying to
It
be
took a long
politically
time
correct.
before anybody said, as in the new chief constable, who said, yeah, we didn't get this right and we're sorry to victims. And that's why we put it in there to say, even when you have actually the police crime commissioner, which is what the mayor is, where you have a police crime commissioner or a mayor that says, I want this to happen, and he spends money getting it happen, it didn't get him what he wanted,
No, because he never had
was
power.
accountability on behalf of the victims and the system was what happened. So that's why I, again, just doubling down on that looking at that, interviewing various people, we came to the view that without statutory powers, Inquiry Act type powers, you're not going to get anywhere. And then I agree that if you, I would say, if you were Bradford, if you were anywhere in my report that we published yesterday, if you were any of the areas that are sort of visible and identifiable, just be ready and be open to the fact that you may be the subject of one of the national inquiries. And I would be surprised if some of the areas that I mentioned, probably including Bradford, would not be subject to being part of a national inquiry. And it's absolutely right that I think members of Parliament, I think victims, I think other people are able to say, we want this to happen here, and that should be balanced out with what I think should be, dare I say, an evidence-based and data-led approach to looking at where you would start and where you would head. So I didn't want Mr. Moore today to get into, this is my hit list, let's just use common parlance, or, you know, dare I say it, this is where I think you should start, because I don't think that was my job. My job was to establish a different set of facts. Do I think you can look at the audit and make that part of your decision-making process, whoever is going to take that role on? I think I probably would if I was theirs. And I think, and I'm sensing and understanding, having met Fiona and seen her previously on Newsnight, good for them for giving her that voice, the government will need to move relatively quickly on making a headway on starting some local and doing the national inquiry, running into some of these local inquiries and getting on with them, because I think the sooner we get on with them, the sooner we can get accountability on the table. And even if we can never, ever do right by the victims, because at the end of the day, the people that did those crimes are the perpetrators, we can at least get the system to look at where it needs to apologise, where it should be accountable, and where it should make redress. So,
but she's still making excuses. Oh, we haven't got the right data. We haven't got this. We know by the data that we've already got, which isn't complete. Most of these criminals are self-identifying. Most of them are saying what ethnicity they are, what religion they are. And we know that councils that they're going to speak to ask for data have been covering it up. So you know that the data that they're going to give is already corrupt because they didn't keep the data. On some of them, they even removed Pakistani Muslim on the actual documents, on the arrest, or Pakistani. They actually blocked them out with ink or paper or scraped it out. We know this. It's in our evidence, in the 190 odd page. We also know by police saying that evidence has been tampered with. We know that I think it's something like 97% of the actual rapes complaints wasn't, I think it's between 90 and 97%, were not upheld. The police said that there was a problem with the girl as a witness, there was a problem because she was a prostitute, or that she was a girlfriend of a 52-year-old man, which, to be honest, that officer should be removed from duty now. Any prosecution that wouldn't prosecute because a 12-year-old is sleeping with a 52-year-old man because they're boyfriend and girlfriend should be out of the job. He should lose his law licence. But I don't think a lot's going to happen even after the inquiry. They are already trying to cover it up. They've already said that ministers will not be involved or be able to be questioned about this. MPs and ministers should be able to be questioned, as well as police, counsellors, social workers and parents. And that's about it for today. Have a good one.